Welcome back to the Edit Girls podcast. Today we're joined by editor Esther Sokolow. Esther's an LA-based editor whose work bridges big studio worlds and really grounded, character-driven storytelling. She's recently cut HBO's It, Welcome to Derry, where she returned to the eerie universe she first entered as first assistant on Andy Muschietti's It Chapter 2. Before all of that, she'd worked across some huge features: The Flash, Rampage, Bloodshot, and The Guilty, and even spent time as a VFX editor on Guardians of the Galaxy whilst working at Method Studios. We're going to be taking a deep dive into Esther's meticulous work on It, Welcome to Derry, how she builds tension, builds character and emotion in her cuts, as well as her path to the editor's chair. Welcome, Esther.
Thank you so much for having me.
So good to have you here. I wanted to obviously say congratulations. It must be a really, crazy time. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's like, having worked on something in your kind of bubble, in your team, and then letting it go out into the world? What the last few weeks have felt like?
Oh, thank you. So first of all, I'm really excited to be here and talk with you. It has been the most incredible experience having the first few episodes of our show air. When you're working on something like it, Welcome to Dairy, we've been tinkering on it for, 2+ years, and it's really, you know, been our baby, and we've really just cherished every single frame of it. When you're working on it, it feels like it's yours, but you're always conscious of the audience and the fans, and they're really our true north when crafting a show like this. But when you release it, it no longer is yours, it belongs to them. And it's for them to love or hate or cherish or, whatever, however people receive it. But it's been really special to have people resonate so strongly with the story that we crafted for them. It's been really a wonderful and frankly moving experience.
And like you said, the fans, it's such a beloved story ever since the book. I had it written down of when it was released. Was it the 80s? Yeah, it was first um, released in the 80s. So it's something that has been around for generations, and people have experienced it from the book to the miniseries to the new films from the late 2010s, and then obviously the series. So what I'd love to know is what your It Pennywise origin story is like, when that clown, when that story first starts, burnt in your memory. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I had not seen the miniseries as a child, but Pennywise is iconic. Georgie in the yellow raincoat, iconic. So there was always that sense of what Stephen King had crafted with the It story. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and we had seasons then. We don't get rain very often in LA, but I remember always being anxious when crossing past a storm drain, like, don't get swept away, like, don't watch out for the clown. So yeah, I mean, it's fascinating how a book can be so have such a lasting legacy and presence. It really has been remarkable, and it's earned, and it's really special to get to be a part of that legacy now. The first time I saw the first It film, which I didn't work on, I got to see it early, when we were crafting Rampage. We had the opportunity to see it with a small group of the editorial crew. I scare really easily. I'm very reactionary when I watch things, and I remember just completely sliding out of my chair watching that film. It's like, this is some master craftsmanship. So when I got the opportunity to work on it, chapter 2 with Andy, it was quite a blessing.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going through my own It journey, and as I mentioned to you, like reading the book, but the first I ever saw was Andy's It Chapter 1 as well. Oh no, it
Oh,
was actually
amazing.
Ooh, bizarrely. No, it was the second one. It was your one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I absolutely loved it. And yeah, again, reading the book has been a journey for me this year and dipping in and out of these characters and then watching the film. And then I was just to my joy knowing that Welcome to Derry was coming out. Was a perfect ending to this year. Um, so you mentioned Stephen King, and
Mhm.
obviously, like, such a beloved author, storyteller. He has this interesting relationship, I feel, with the film versions of his stories. Famously, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining was one that he didn't feel that connection with. And I saw an interview with him where he said he called his book warm, and he said that the film was cold, and it didn't connect with him. Obviously, it is a masterpiece in its own right, but what was it, do you feel, like within it, Welcome to Derry, that King did resonate with, because he has, given his blessing to the series, and obviously, yeah, it has said that he feels it's amazing. So what is that warmth that Andy and the team has brought to it, Welcome to Derry, that you feel resonates with King and what he intended for these stories?
Yeah. The It universe, these are classified as horror stories. The It films are horror films, but really for me at their core, and I know Andy would agree, those are stories about you know, the experience of childhood, growing up, loss of innocence, and the themes of loss and generational trauma. And those are really beautiful and universal themes. And even though Pennywise is this interdimensional killer clown, he really preys on these deeply human emotions. And I think one of the things that Andy captures so well are those human textures. And it makes the world really enriched. And so I think that, Andy was very conscious of, and wants to pay honor to the source material. And so there's a lot of effort, labor, and care spent to honor what was done to begin with. We're not trying to improve upon. We are trying to continue a beautiful legacy.
And like you said, such a huge part of that are these characters and these stories that we all resonate with growing up, coming of age, friendships ending, all of these things. That's why they resonate. So can you tell us a bit about how there's a lot of characters, right? There's a lot of kids, there's a lot going on, and we'll talk about the subverting of expectations in a little bit. But how do you ensure that each character, we get to know them, they have enough time spent, while still moving the narrative forward?
So editing is an evolution. It's a process of iterating. So my first goal when I start any scene is to build an authentic performance. I don't want my goal to be immediately in service of plot. Obviously, plot is our guiding principle, but the characters have to feel real in those environments. Any editor will tell you, it's you yourself know. The first assembly is very, very long, and that's not because we don't know where it needs to go yet. It's because we want to feel what's real and what's true, and then once you know who each character is authentically and what those actors have brought into the performance, then you can have the ability to step back and see what's essential in that truth, and what you can whittle away that doesn't detract from who those people are as they move through the narrative. So, I mean, it's a huge ensemble cast. We have um, many um, many stories that don't yet interconnect, that you see the spider webs of how they might entwine later on. So it requires a lot of juggling. Andy and I are big fans of scene cards. I think it really helps to step back on the episode level and see where all your scenes live, and then how you might rearrange them to pace out um, certain larger beats. So yeah, it's a fine dance, and a constant journey of iterating.
Can you talk a bit more like about that stepping back, that sort
Mhm.
of bigger thing? Because I think sometimes editors can get really in there on the minutiae, and that stuff is important. But when you step back and you see, and I think that's why it's so satisfying on a second watch, actually, having watched the first two episodes again, to see what those little foundational moments for each character or part of the story kind of, represent. So, what is the importance of stepping back and looking at the big picture and rearranging? And what examples could you give us of maybe where doing that things really changed, if they did,
Yeah,
everything
absolutely.
in order and stuff like that?
So it's about propulsion. It's about trusting the audience for when you can step away from characters and they're going to still hold on to where their journey was when you left off. Some of it can be playing with them. If you leave a character in a moment of peril, does that amplify the tension if you don't see how that resolves? Um, so an example from a bird's eye perspective on episode 2 was figuring out where we wanted to check in with Leroy Hanlon as he was uncovering what happened with the Makarov, and the attack that he'd had the night before. And uh, the scripted plan was that storyline we're really meeting new kids, seeing Charlotte's experience in uh, the town of Derry for the first time. And those first details of Leroy's journey didn't happen until later in the episode. And one of the things Andy and I realized when we stepped back was there's multiple times that Leroy's going through the military, and not every one of those scenes needs to happen next to each other. You can take one of those, move it earlier, and let the audience see, hold on, something's fishy here. I don't think I really trust you know, what he's been told is what happened. And then what's he going to do about it? I'll come back later. And so it's almost this act of juggling of how many balls do you want to have up in the air at any one time. And you want to trust that the audience is smart enough to play along um with that juggling, and also that you're not shoving aside other characters and then dumping in one section of the plot. You want to make sure in an ensemble cast like this that everyone's receiving um adequate breath. Um, One of the things that we discovered in the process of moving things around is that it actually put the Leroy scene with the Makarov, um, or with him hearing and asking about the Makarov gun right next to Charlotte, which had previously not been next to each other, and it gave us permission emotionally to be like, okay, we know how Leroy operates when confronted with information he doesn't trust or believe. How does that awareness inform now what we're going to learn about Charlotte? And because Charlotte was introduced with Leroy, by putting those two scenes together, there was an emotional through line we were able to inject into Charlotte's scene as well.
That's amazing. Like, yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, but when they're side by side, it suddenly you see this married couple and actually how they do things differently. You
Mhm.
wouldn't get that same effect if those scenes were spread out, and then intercepted with another storyline. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So let's talk about the. And I know you must have talked about it lots and lots and lots, but it's obviously such a big part of the story in terms of how episode 1 to episode 2 leads us on a journey with our characters, Teddy and Bill and Lily, obviously forming this bond and looking, talking about Matty and then Susie at the theatre. We think, and Ronnie, obviously, we think that these are our losers, right? Like, we're kind of brought on this journey and we're building a bond and an emotional sort of feeling towards them. But then something happens at the end of episode 1 that we weren't probably expecting. So can you tell us a bit about why that was so powerful to essentially kill off these these big characters that we spent the whole of episode 1 getting to know.
Yeah. Uh, when I read it on the script, I have to say I gave an audible hell yeah. Like it is such an amazing way to kickstart the season. And I think it really centers the goals of this season for audiences who were fans of the films, that like there's no plot armor. Anyone could go, and this Pennywise is really strong and really a force to be reckoned with. Um, I in developing those characters, there's two main goals. Obviously, you want the audience to fall in love with these characters, and you want that experience of the massacre to be incredibly jarring and visceral and shocking. But it's also really important that those be authentic characters and an authentic trauma for the characters who do survive. So it's not like the pilot is this wasted episode of like, dang, I really fell in love with these characters. Like, what happened? Like, falling in love with them is the point. You know, the survivors have to reconcile that guilt, that agony, and also nobody's going to do anything about it unless I do something, which is very in keeping with, you know, the original losers from the books of like, there's nobody else to turn to. Like, I have to do something about this. So yeah, it was very fun to subvert and to kill all the kids with Andy. I will say, such a there's a huge amount of discovery that happens in the editorial phase. So we actually shot episode 1 and 2 not in order. We shot episode 2, 3, and 4 first, and then unfortunately had to stop down due to the strikes. And it meant that we weren't able to resume filming for episode 1 until um, February of the following year. So there was a huge gap. Um, and while it was challenging, it actually allowed Andy and me and the producers of the studio to discover a key aspect, which we were going to withhold the kills until Lily's nightmare at the head of episode 2. And, you know, we filmed episode 2 first. It made sense. Here we go. But when you start putting the pilot together, it becomes incredibly clear that you need to see everything. You got to see the kills. It's got to be brutal. It has to be unequivocal what happened. And if you only ever see him in a dream, did it ever really even happen? So that became clear that we had to migrate the kills into the pilot. And then that actually allowed Andy and me to do an intercut with Ronnie's experience in the projector booth. And that was initially conceived to be she doesn't know what's happening and is frantically trying to get out. And then who's alive? You see Lily's hand. But going back to what I was just saying about how fun it is to play with, you know, when you leave a character, by virtue of putting the kills in, it allowed us to jump back to Ronnie, what's happening with her, jump back to Lily, jump back to Ronnie, and all of a sudden everyone's in danger and this tension and horror becomes really amplified.
That's so interesting. So originally Ronnie's scene was going to be just her perspective, her POV of maybe what was happening, and not as intercut. Is that right? Between
Yeah, it was meant to be, or was the initial conceit was that the mutant baby surges towards Lily. We push in on her horror, and then we're in the booth. The projector window slammed down. She's turning every which way. The door slams. She grabs the hammer, breaks out, runs out, and then Lily's hand arrives. And it played really effectively.
Yeah.
But would audiences be confused? And that's where, you know, so many of those discussions, you know, we're not just, you know, cutting and like that works. Like, you're always thinking when you're watching, how will it be received? How will people view it? What do they need? What will they crave? And how can we really feed them? And so the kills became like, this is their buffet. This is Pennywise's buffet, and this is the audience's buffet. Let them dine. So
yeah. I read somewhere that people saying that Welcome to Derry is like Stranger Things, but for psychos, which obviously, which
No
obviously
notes.
says one thing, but it also is really interesting because you're dealing with a generation that don't know that Stranger Things was that in fact influenced, the Duffer Brothers were so influenced by King and it. So what I just sort of on that, like in terms of influences, are there any other pop culture influences that you drew from that informed any of your edits or just,
Mhm.
perhaps sort of more textual like styles and things that you chose to watch and be
Yeah.
influenced by whilst you were editing?
So, really, a show of this kind, I'm really blessed because there's two films to pull from that have already built such a rich textural and editorial voice. I was very fortunate to work on it chapter two, but it chapter one is a masterpiece. I think it's gonna, that's an instant classic. And I love the way that Jason Valentine cut those films. And so it was actually a real privilege to get to study his choices and see how it could inform my own artistic sensibilities with the footage that we were playing with. And because there's certain things that he had established as the tonal language, maybe those had relevance to what we were crafting. So in episode one, there's the scene where Lily and Maddie are up on the standpipe, and Maddie starts to ask what happened to her father. She gets quiet and starts to tell this story of her dad's pickle accident. So beautifully performed. And it reminded me so much of in It Chapter One when Mike Hanlon tells the story of his parents and how they died in an apartment fire. And it's that same, I mean, it really are these two parallel scenes of these children who have experienced the horrific loss of their parents. And one of the things that Jason did so beautifully in that scene was as Mike's story is being told, the sound creeps in. You hear the screams, you hear the fire, you hear he's telling his traumatic memory, but then the audience is experiencing that memory alongside him. And it's a very classic editorial device, but knowing that Jason had already established that in the language of the films meant that that moment when Lily tells her story, that was a natural moment that I really wanted to lean in and create a similar sense of the world enveloping people sonically.
Yeah, no, it's really powerful. Sound is again an editor's playground when it comes to building a story. And I think what's so brilliant about what you've done with episode one and episode two is how you also, as well as sounds like in when Lily's telling the story, and we know that's almost like her imagination, the reliving,
Mhm.
but also how you use diegetic sound. And one of the scenes that really stands out to me with that is when the patty cakes are
Yeah.
doing the caking
Yep.
in the canteen, and you've got Ronnie and Lily talking about Ronnie's father, and and it kind of builds and builds and builds. Can you talk a little bit about how you use diegetic sound to build upon the story, to build upon tensions or create mood? That was great.
Yeah. So I'm so glad you mentioned that scene. That is hands down my favorite scene in the whole series to have gotten to cut. I just love that scene with all of my heart. Um, and I have to say, it's such a gift that Andy is so aware and fascinated by and protective of the editorial process because that scene was actually crafted in the cut, but he had shot and allowed the actors to play in their environments. So Andy, like the girls, the boys were called the patty cakes, but he's from Argentina. Their childhood games are very different than American games and whatnot. So he didn't know about patty cakes growing up, that like classic clapping game. And if I'm understanding correctly, that was something that actually came out in the rehearsal phase where the kids said, "What if we do this?" So it was not ever scripted to be this. There was an inner cut, obviously, naturally, of the kids watching and they're discussing, but it was never intentionally meant to be the rhythmic device. But he just let the kids play and capture this incredible footage of Marge's hysteria, and she's like desperately trying to fit in, but like the tears are leaking out of her face or out of her eyes. It's so devastating and beautiful. And that was just Andy letting these kids play. And then as we were cutting the scene, Ronnie and Lily's performance is so rich and authentic. And so I was looking for ways with my assistant editor, Janie Gaddy, to how do we amp up in our editorial rhythm to match what they're giving us. And it was actually her idea to use the clapping as that rhythmic device. And it was like, once she said it, it's like, well, that's, first of all, the best thing I've ever heard. But of course, like that is always how the scene was meant to be. And then it just it cut like butter. It was the most exciting discovery. And it's one of those things I just have to say, like, I am so grateful to Janie because, she wasn't just an assistant. She just brought her passion and editorial instincts and collaboration every single day. It was really a pleasure to watch back cuts with her and ping pong ideas and see things from different angles and really evolve the cut together. So yeah, she's amazing.
Oh, I'm so glad that we spoke about that scene because, in a way you could imagine it being on the script that you hear patty cakes, you could have seen that written out. But the fact that and especially like you said, Andy didn't necessarily know that this clapping game was something, that it's a beautiful example of how the process must have been so collaborative
Mhm.
in order to get to that point, because you allow ideas to come to the surface, and they can come from anyone. They don't have to come from a specific person. Obviously the kids, Andy, Janie, you
Mhm.
all played a role. Um so sound and tension, I think, brings us nicely, because we have to talk about it, to the insane opening scene in the station wagon with Matty and that deranged family. I've just got OUT, OUT, like hanging around in my mind. Tell us, explain a bit of those, kind of talk us through that scene and give us some other story beats, the moments when things change and
Yeah.
how you built that story. Yeah, just talk us through it a bit.
Yeah. So that scene was cut many different ways at many different parts of it. So I think first off, I want to step back and talk the logisticals of how that scene came to be, and then I'll break down some of the creative choices as it evolved. So we shot that sequence on a volume wall, which allowed our 5 actors to be in a car with real environment projections outside the car windows, which is such an incredible gift that Andy and our VFX team chose to do, because it meant that I didn't have to think about visual effects costs or logistics. Everything looked practical. All of the labor on a visual effects side had happened front end. And so it really freed us up to just cut for performance. So because of that being how we shot the scene, I cut it first as storyboards and previs and soundscaped all of it. Then they shot winter driving plates, and we each of those locations that they pass through are different places. Of course, there's not like a natural like forest road to gas station to streets to bridge. So all of those had to be stitched together into kind of a 10-minute run. And then, so that was edited. Then I was fortunate enough to cut the station wagon sequence on set as they were shooting it. So live cutting it then. And really that process is, jamming through, like, did we get it? Not here it is. Like I'm live cutting, so it is existing, but I'm not making authentic hang my hat, that's the best performance takes. It's a lot of last takes, that'll do and then move on. But it was you're having that editorial eye on set ensured that we did have what we needed. The first thing that I do when I get back to LA is I set that edit aside and I start from scratch. But one of the things that became clear while watching on set, that is a natural, thing that would have happened. We, because we had 3 children in that set, we filmed all of the kids first, then wrapped them. We wanted to, it's important to create a very safe environment for them that you're not overworking or exploiting. But it meant that the adults, we filmed their camera angles after the kids had wrapped. And what had happened was the rhythm of the OUTs fell out of sync, because when you're all doing it together, it has one cadence. And then when you strip 2 other voices away, that rhythm can shift. And it's not, not egregious. It's just the subtle changes that happen when you're able to act against each other, versus, imagining or recollecting what that rhythm was. So when we got back to LA, the first thing that I did as I was watching all the footage and pulling all the best bits was to build the OUTs as a sound bed. So it was like, I care about the rhythm and the escalation of that, and then I'll layer picture in. And so it became the fifth of many phases of editing that sequence. But that was very much a sound first section to make sure that we were dialed into the escalating cadence of it. So with the sequence as a whole, editorially, obviously the show is Welcome to Derry. Anyone tuning in should reasonably expect to be horrified in the opening sequence. But we really wanted the family to put Maddie at ease. We weren't necessarily going to be able to put the audience at ease. The title's what the title is. But we wanted, when Maddie meets this family, there to be this wholesomeness, this, they're this classic nuclear family, like the thing that Maddie's been searching for. You can see he's got a bruise on his eye. He clearly comes from an abusive home. He's running away from Derry. So that informs a lot of what you know about the character, not to mention the pacifier, which is such an indication of how emotionally abandoned he must be, that he needs to self-soothe in that way. So when he meets this family, it's Pennywise manifesting as what he really wants. So Andy and I played a lot, with the reactions, with the mothering sympathy, playing with what we wanted to have on the radio, to all create that sense of this warm hug before it starts turning. And then when that turn, when do you really want to feel the darkness slide? So we played with, you want to go with when the mother says strangulation. That's the first time that she looks at camera and you feel the weirdness of what's happening. The kids are laughing and you're holding a little too long on them. The liver is just really oh, that's not normal. And you hear a little fly buzzing around. This is weird. So yeah, it was fun to play with the amplification of that.
Yeah, I know exactly that sense in a way, even though absolutely you know what you're letting yourself in for as an audience member, you still think, oh, maybe these people are going to help him, You're just like, maybe it's going to be okay. Oh no, they're not. They're just, yeah. So then obviously I think another part of it is the graphic extent to which that scene goes,
Yes.
is like, whoa. I mean, my parents don't understand why I like horror movies at all. And I think if I showed them that, they would think that I need to be, locked up somewhere. But so powerful for it to get to that intense stage where the baby is literally being born and it's sort of no holds bar. Can you tell us a bit about that sort of idea of like how much you're going to show, how much you're going to reveal, in terms of gore, in terms of graphicness, and where to find the balance?
Well, uh, it's it's fascinating how supportive the studio was. I will say Andy and we really wanted to push it. We really wanted to hold as long as we could, but there was also an expectation that we would get a note back to cut it down. So I think we initially held longer, going like, all right, well, they're obviously going to tell us to cut it down. And they didn't. We were like, okay. So what started as a let's give them a note, like an easy note to give, became, oh, actually, we have full permission. Let's really go for it. So one of the things that we show a lot of blood. We cut multiple times because we really wanted to um, use as much of that take as possible. So it's like you want to see like the blood gushing, then you see from above more blood gushing, and that's actually like a loop, so you get really like all of it. Um, and then one of my favorite edits that we lingered on is when the practical baby is pushing out of her, and that's their prosthetic legs. It's somebody underneath with a like a baby mutant baby puppet that they're like pushing through the birth canal, and he's pushing, he's pushing, he's pulling, he's pushing again, and having the underwear kind of moving with the baby. It was really fun to just let that play out. Like there's no VFX, that is what they shot. And the goal is to make you queasy and horrified. And as an audience, like you really shouldn't know whether to look away or are you too horrified that you can't even move. So we wanted that sensation of real horror in your bones. Just, I can't believe I just saw that with my eyeballs.
You definitely achieved that. Um, yeah, no, it's amazing and it's so powerful. And I think that, yeah, it sets the tone, for the rest of the series. But one of the things I did really want to talk about was, the time period and the racial tensions that were happening during that time, and Leroy's character, particularly the scene where Masters like refuses to salute him, and what all those little looks and glances and the way to sort of build that sense of unease, for being a, black person in Derry. Did you sort of pull on any sort of advice and perspective from different people?
Yeah, I that scene went through a lot of iterating because that is the first time as an audience that you're really getting to see like, Leroy obviously is a black man, moves through the world incapable of hiding his blackness, nor should he. But with the backdrop of 1962 and the Jim Crow era, you know that this isn't a welcome environment for someone who looks like him. But by virtue of him being a major in the Air Force, especially at that time, that means that he really is the best of the best. And so when he arrives in that environment and is introduced to his new men, there was an important calibration that we did to ensure that you visibly see how somebody else would respect him. You see, somebody like stand up straight and like give him his rank and due. And then having the dichotomy of Masters not giving that respect and couldn't be bothered. I'll get to you next time, brother, is so disrespectful in its casualness. And so you need to see what actual respect is in order to make sure that that hits harder. One of the things that we also trialed in that sequence was whether it warranted score or not. There's a lot of emotions at play, but we had initially scored that scene and it was heavy handed. We were telling the audience too much how to feel. And so once we stripped the score out and let it just be, this is the reality of the world, I think it really enriched what Leroy was sensing from Masters, and just let the tension of that play out more authentically. So it's one of those things that I'm so glad that Andy was able to go back in time to tell the interlude chapters of the book, and set the first season, the show, in 1962, because Derry is a place where racism has festered, and racism exists everywhere. What happened in the past, there's still racial challenges today. So these are stories that are more true now than maybe they were even then. What Pennywise is capable of doing as a villain is really get into the underbelly of hatred and racism that kind of lives at the surface of this town. And these were elements that were always present in the book, but in the films weren't capable of being fully explored. So this feels like an authentic chance to step back and unpeel those layers, um, and honor the journey of the Hanlon family and the struggles that they would have faced at this time.
Yeah, and I suppose it being a series and giving you, more than the 2 hours that a feature would necessarily give you, there's space to explore those kinds of things and those different themes. And again, knowing the book and knowing where it's all going to lead, and again, I'm myself like just so kind of anticipating the end of this particular season. And am I correct
Yeah.
saying that there are going to be 2 other seasons going back and back?
That is certainly Andy's goal. Yes, we are
It's
eagerly
gonna be
hoping for a
okay.
green light soon. So yeah,
Yeah.
every
Well,
27 years backwards.
yes, yes, incredible, incredible. Um, so I have so many questions about all of this, but I also know that the Edit Girls, community, audience, all of the people that have shared their stories on Edit Girls, that engage, would love to know a bit about your story. And I understand that you were part of the ACE internship as well, like
I
sort
was
of.
an honorary intern for the internship. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay. So
not they selected two interns, but I was one of the 10 finalists for that program.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, can you just give us a little summary of your own journey to
Mhm.
the chair? And again, I know, like, with this series and with horror in general, and being able to work on just dream projects, how are, someone that a lot of editors and particularly sort of young editors would look up to and want to be in your shoes, how you've got to this place yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's very sweet to say. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I grew up um, very immersed in classic cinema. So a lot of Hitchcock, a lot of film noir, a lot of Sherlock Holmes, Marx Brothers, Charlie Chaplin. Um, really studying. These were the films that my dad loved, and I feel like he really instilled in me a deep love of those films as well. Uh, and I think the first time that I realized that there was a career in this was when I saw Lord of the Rings. That movie changed my life because my dad is such a bibliophile. He wanted me to read the books before the films came out, and I had like one leather bound copy that of like all three books in one that I carried in my backpack every day to school, like all like 20 pounds of it. I'd sit in the hallway reading it. And then when the third movie came out, my dad pulled me out of school and we went to see all three movies back to back in a theater, like a big movie marathon. It was like, this is the greatest day of my life. This is so
So
cool.
memory, that's a cool memory for sure.
It's so special. I mean, like, who cares what I was learning in school that day? Like, none of it was important. Like, that was such a defining moment in my childhood to see of films of such scope that had been so lovingly crafted. And it really changed, I mean, it clearly changed my whole life. But I thought I was going to be a doctor. Like everything was like, nope, sorry, I'm going to go to film school. And so I went to Chapman University. Um, and in the summers and winter breaks in between my semesters, Atlanta had really started to develop as a film hub. It wasn't what it is now when I was growing up, but the first beginnings of that were starting. And we had a website that was the Georgia Film Commission that would post what projects were coming to shoot and also the office email and phone number. And I would just email them and say, I would work for free. Like, would you let me PA? Like, I'm available. I'll do whatever. I didn't even have a car at that point. So my dad was driving me around to, night shoots all over Atlanta. And I just was having the time of my life as an 18, 19-year-old working on these shows, getting to see how true professionals make something. And that really just kept centering me of like, this is all I want to do. I got to do this. I got to make a career out of this. And then when I graduated college, I was very fortunate to get a post PA job on Amazing Spider-Man 2, the Andrew Garfield movie at Sony. And to get like right out of school, like 21, 22, to get to work on a Spider-Man movie. I mean, Spider-Man is one of my favorite superheroes of all time. And one of the things that was so profound about that experience, beyond just getting to work with Pietro Scalia, who's one of the greatest editors of all time, and to see how he cuts, but also getting to go to the grocery store and seeing like that there's a little kid in a Spider-Man shirt and there's like fruit snacks that are Spider-Man themed. Like, this feeling of who you're making something for. That like if you make something beloved, it has this lasting legacy. And that really for me was what drew me to it to begin with. With Hitchcock, I was like, these are films from decades prior, and yet they're still so relevant and powerful. Lord of the Rings, this, classic book now turned into a movie that I'm one of many people who were inspired to go into this career because of that film. And that really has been kind of the anchor in every project that I have worked on, that I really find myself at my happiest when I'm working on something that's meant for people. Like I want there to be an audience. I want people to know how much their hopes and desires, for entertainment, for recognition, for, seeing a mirror into their lives or an emotion that, maybe has been suppressed. Like there's so many nuances within that field. But that is that guiding principle of what is this art if not for giving it to people to be, entertained. So yeah, that's really been the like early crash course, and then it's been a steady experience of collaborating with incredible editors who have been very giving with their time and their principles and philosophy. Jason Ballantyne, I have been very fortunate to to support on 3 films. We did It Chapter 2 together, The Guilty, and then The Flash as well. And I really carried him on my shoulder in many ways on this show to, how would he do it? How can I honor him and my choices? Jin May as well is another editor that I was fortunate to support on 2 films. We did Rampage together and Bloodshot. And he cuts from such a place of empathy, and I really try and have that be a guiding principle in my choices as well. So yeah. And then to go back to the ACE internship, I was very fortunate to be an honorary intern for that. But one of the greatest gifts of that experience was not to be initially selected from a pool of resumes, but really that I found through it my dearest friends. We formed a community together, and we go to the movies together. We talk about our art. We watch things, and we elevate each other's craft. We recommend each other for jobs, and it really instilled in me that sense of community, and then also the spirit of the how invaluable mentorship is, and that we only get to where we are if you have people who are looking out for you, who are teaching you, who are bringing you up with them. And so I try and make sure that with my amazing assistant, Janie Gaddy, like great ideas come from anywhere. And, it meant so much to me that she, gave her creativity freely in collaboration on the project. And my amazing assistant, Haruka Gerald, he was our apprentice on The Flash and came on to the tail end of it Welcome to Derry. And he's really flourished in the spirit of mentorship as well, and has networking groups that meet throughout LA. And it's been really, it's so valuable to invest your time in people who don't see it selfishly and want to pay that forward. And it really makes the, I don't know, that's the beauty of it, right? That this is to me, it's an art, not a career. And so working with people who see it the same way is really special.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's so true, and I think I love your dad, by the way. Like he's just the one that's
I
kind
love my dad too.
of so cute. My husband's reading Harry Potter to my daughter, and he's got the same attitudes where he's like, "We're going to read the book, and then you can watch the film. We're going to read the book, and you watch the film." So they're on the fourth book, and
That's amazing.
soon she'll be able to watch the fourth film. But
Mm.
yeah, she loves it, and just
Oh,
seeing that passion in her, and yeah, Lord of the Rings, what a sort of, you know, film series to have influenced a whole generation of
mhm.
filmmakers. Just sitting and watching all of those behind the scenes was
Yes.
just so inspiring for people to want to get into different aspects of filmmaking.
Mhm.
um I have a question actually and
Yes.
we're going back to, because mentorship and like just knowing about careers, some of the questions with that, but one of the questions that came back that was about the show,
Mhm.
which I'll ask, and then we can wrap things up. But is now, can I pronounce so her handle is AKU_SHAKU. Um and her question is, I'll read it out word for word. So, first of all, she said, OMG, yes. So I think that she's very excited. I have a question. The first two episodes feature body horror, specifically reproductive body horror.
Mhm.
So we're referencing the station wagon scene with the birth, and then also Mother Thing. Is that
Yeah.
how she's referenced, like
Yes.
Ronnie's nightmare? So, um, as an editor and as a woman, were those scenes extra disturbing for you to cut? What was your creative process to work with material of this nature? I think we've kind of touched on that. I don't think it was too disturbing for you. I think
No, I had a great time.
you reveled in it. And she says, "Thank you and excellent work on the show. I am loving it."
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, I think maybe we could talk about the mother thing scene a little bit, but yeah, how does it feel working on those particular themes of horror?
Yeah. So it was not lost on us that there were two birth sequences. So we really wanted to make sure that they texturally were different and had different cutting patterns to it. Um, there's they are two births, but those birth experiences are very different kinds of trauma. We liked to joke that for the station wagon, that's actually a really easy birth. Like, bless the mom, like easy, like she's good. That's the fastest, like in and out. Um, but with Mother Thing, that birth is really about Ronnie's experience in the womb, and the devastation of, like, she, in her emotional worldview, killed her mother in childbirth, which is such a heartbreaking experience for a child to shoulder. So they're different experiences. And so in the editorial phase, one of the things that we made sure to do was there were two shots that were profile view of the stomach, but we wanted to not have them be parallel. So you see in the station wagon the mutant baby like pushing on the stomach, but in the mother thing sequence, we had a very similar angle, which we had explored using in that sequence, and it was too close to what we had in the station wagon. So we only wanted to use that angle when you start seeing Ronnie emerging from, the rip in the stomach. And then the rest of that sequence isn't about the birth. I mean, the stomach C-section becomes, this gaping maw. She's being pulled back in with the tentacle, and all of a sudden, the kind of horror that it is completely different texturally from the station wagon. So we played a lot with, the sonic landscape of that. And one of the things that we played with Mother Thing that we had a lot of fun with was the absence of sound. So when Ronnie bites through the tentacle and falls back, all that music and horror cuts out, but you still see Mother Thing there in the bed, and then she scurries backwards, still no music. That's authentic ambience. And then this big like placenta falls out of her, and I mean, Andy and I had the greatest laugh with that. We were like, longer, 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 louder, louder. Like it just, it couldn't be wetter or goopier. Like it just, that sound was really electrifying. And so I feel like while they are similar sequences in their subject matter, we crafted them very tonally differently. And really it was about getting into Ronnie's headspace in Mother Thing, and feeling this inevitability of her being pulled back in. And then the triumph in some ways of her biting into the tentacle and pulling away, and having some ability to fight back.
It just only in that moment did I really think, oh yeah, they're both birth scenes. Like
Yeah.
I didn't really connect like that, because obviously it's a different experience. Her, being, inside and yeah, coming out. It's just
Mhm.
crazy. Very, very good. I literally have got so many other questions, but I feel like I could just talk to you for ages. One of the things I wanted to ask was, is there a character that you felt connected with, more than others, just in getting to know
I,
them?
I have to say Lily for sure. I find her tragedy really spellbinding, and I find that fear of what other people will think, like, will they think I'm crazy? If my if I try and do good, people will be punished. If I, say the wrong thing, I'll be punished. It immediately transported me to, you know, my recollections of being a 12-year-old, and how painful the desire to be liked and to fit in with other people was. And I'm excited for people to experience her character's journey, because I feel, I mean, all of the kids are so relatable. And so there's, I think a character for everyone to really resonate with, and want to protect. Um, the joy of crafting performances around children really comes from this place of, in horror, it's especially powerful when it's children in danger, because they're so innocent. And even if you could be sitting on the couch going like, don't do that, don't go into the cemetery, don't do, like, they're children, they're naive, they haven't lived a full life yet. And so that goal is always for the audience to want to reach into the screen and like, give those kids a hug. So I really felt that with Lily, and I felt that with so many of our characters. Little Rich, Will, Ronnie. I mean, they're just the most adorable kids. Phil and Teddy and Susie. Oh, Susie had the best handwriting in her class. Now she's got no hand.
It's oh god. It's Susie when, I can't remember exactly what he said about going to go and find the book, and she's like, I got it. I'll do it," in the library. I love Susie.
She's the
Um,
best.
okay, we can't not talk about Lily's pickle scene.
Yeah.
So, if we could just talk about the pickle scene. So, what really sort of stood out for me in that scene were those quirky little moments of the people,
Mhm.
like, looking behind and looking round and the little sound cues and things that sort of came along with that. Tell us a bit about how you formed that scene and created that kind of weirdness, that kind of kooky sort of um terrifying quirkiness within the pickle scene. Yeah, tell us a bit about that.
Well, it starts with Andy because he brings kooky weirdness to everything he does in the best way. He said this in other interviews, but I just think it's such an amazing anecdote, so I want to share it here. When he was meeting the extras for the pickle scene, he asked one of the extras if he could dance, and the extra said no. And he says, "Excellent, dance." And so, like, the guy who's like doing the weird waltz in the background, that's him. And it's, that wasn't this scripted moment. It was just Andy coming up with these brilliant choices that are weird and messed up and only work because the guy's not a dancer. And that leans into this distorted psychosis we're all collectively experiencing with Lily. Um, in the editing of that sequence, Andy and I played a lot with time and how long to linger as we descend into that paranoia. Um, we shuffled around some of the orders of, like, when is she turning here? When is she going here? Uh, and we also tested a lot of how quickly could we get to the pickled dad sequence. Um, but what was really clear to us in the testing of it is that the scene needed to be long and it needed to have her turning each corner, hearing the whispering, seeing somebody's head tilt. Um, because without it, the audience is just watching Lily arrive and they're not mentally experiencing what Lily is experiencing. And so and a lot of the devices that we've done with Lily has been about bringing audiences into her mental state. So I'm going to go back to the very first time you meet Lily as a character in episode 1. She's turning the corner of the school and she's hugging her books close, and you hear the lockers slamming, 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 slamming. And that there are these heightened slams that are very cerebral, like she's hearing the echoes of it in her head. And that's really this headspace of everyone's looking at me, everyone's judging me. And so you know that about her as a character. That's not Pennywise playing that trick on her. That's her feeling a fear of perception, and then her classmates playing a trick on her. And then when we get to the pickle jail sequence, Pennywise knows this about her, and he's subverting that and twisting it. And it's no longer in her head that she just has to work towards and make peace with. It is all consuming. And we wanted the audience to feel that sense of inevitability. Like, at any moment, he's coming around the corner, and you see the pickles, what we've been teasing for 2 episodes now. You should know it's going to be her dad's body parts and pickles. But it's going to come to her whether she wants it or not.
I think that way in which and I think about it particularly like with Teddy and the lamp, and the way in which that's sort of, yeah, that foundation, it just feels like so relatable. You hear something as a child, it gets stuck in your head, and that's it. You can't sleep, it's all you think
Yep.
about. I have an 8-year-old daughter. The moment it's zombies, she's seen a zombie image somewhere and it's all she talks about. And then she He's trying to process it. And I think that with Teddy's scene with the lamp, it's that
Mhm.
it's perfect. It's like that for me was the most kind of, oh yeah, that's a kid kind of having that fear, and then Pennywise obviously playing on that fear, which makes the whole of it so relatable. Um that scene, I think, does one of the best jobs of going between what we think is reality, what Teddy is seeing, particularly because it's like light, dark, light, dark. How did you balance, yeah, that sort of real versus dream versus what he sees in his head? And obviously it's not a dream, he's experiencing it, but cutting between light and dark in that way in that scene.
I That scene cut together really easily, I have to say. Andy shoots so intentionally and moves the camera really nicely. So a scene like that, you want to, go wide for a certain period. You want to start creeping in, um, the lights flickering on and off. So there's a lot of foretelling what's going to happen. So you don't have to worry. There is a jump scare, but you don't have to worry of lulling the audience into a false sense of security. You want to have them go, when's it going to happen? I know it's happening. There's no way I'm living in this scene and the scene's not going to get twisted. Um, so the language of how the camera was moving and how the light is flickering lent itself to a really natural editing rhythm. Um, but then it's a question of when should people see it? So obviously, when he turns the light switch on, and you cut to the lampshade for the first time, seeing it a face. That's, for some people, going to be the first scare. But there's an actual first scare before it. The shot right before where Teddy looks at the lamp, we had a practical lamp. Well, we had two practicals, but we had a regular lamp and then we had a Harry lamp. And the very last shot before he turns it on is Harry lamp. And if you're just looking out of the corner of your eye, you're going to see a little like, that's not right. And I like that sense of unease of, here we go, like a little bit of breath work of like, oh, I better suck in some oxygen before I lose all of it to the scare. Um, and then when, of course, he turns it on and it's revealed, he knocks it over, scurries backwards. And then when it's on the ground and can't see it, that's another moment of, is it real now? Are we back in reality, or is it still Pennywise messing with him? And so the music's still ramping up, but it's not the horror cues. It's like, and it's rolling. But is it rolling because he kicked it? Is it rolling because it's possessed? Um, yeah, it was really remarkable piecing it together. And I have to say, since I talked earlier about how reactive an audience member I am, even though I am immensely familiar with every single frame of this show, uh, I jumped at the premiere at the lampshade. It still got me. Um, yeah, I don't know whether to be embarrassed or pleased about that.
I think you should be really pleased. I think difference between as well it being the jump scare and then yeah, seeing the hairy lamp before it reminds me of that scene in Hereditary where she's up in the corner and it's
Hmm.
like see it, you don't see it.
Yeah,
But you don't miss a jump scare. Everybody
yeah,
experiences a jump scare, but the little weird unnerving thing that you see out the corner of your eye, that's more unsettling in a way.
completely.
Mm, you did a phenomenal job, and I cannot wait to start watching. And I, again, we could maybe go into that territory, but like, I kind of don't want it to be spoiled for myself. So everybody, yeah, I mean, I've just seen rave reviews, and I know for myself, I genuinely love it, and I'm so looking forward to like the final 4 episodes. But thank you so much
Oh my
for
gosh, thank
sharing.
you so much. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for sharing it like on your socials, and I'm so pleased that the show is being marketed, how it is. All I'd say is that people, watch it. So you don't have things spoiled because there's so much out there. Just encourage people to watch it
Yeah.
and go along with the journey. So is there anything else, sort of final things that you'd like to share about the experience that we haven't touched upon?
I wanna um give a shout out to the entire editorial team because this was such a collaborative, creative experience. I was fortunate to cut the first 2 episodes and 2 episodes later in the season, but, Glenn Garland and Matt Colonna, the show's, other 2 editors, were brilliant, and we really, um, we discussed everything together. We were constantly showing each other scenes, and it was really such a creatively stimulating environment where we could all test and bounce ideas off of each other. And the same goes to obviously Janie Gaddy, my assistant, um, Grant Wooldridge, and Greg London. Like there was so much collaborative energy always in the cutting room, and that just makes it a really joyful experience. Grant would often joke that there were never any Sunday scaries on this job. That like there's never that feeling of like, oh, like I got to go to work on Monday. Like making this show, obviously, when audiences watch it, like the show is what it is to them as a viewer. So it doesn't necessarily matter what our experience was making it, but it was made with so much love and so much care. And I think that that really bleeds through every frame, and yeah, it was really special. It was an amazing team, and I'm very fortunate to have been amongst their number. So I just want to give all the flowers to them as well.
And you will forever be a part of, the it story wherever it goes in the years to come. Um, yeah. So yeah, huge congratulations and thank you so much.
Thank you, Kim. Really appreciate it.